All right. Hello, hello. Welcome back to the podcast, everyone. I am your unreluctant host, Will PB. Today is a very exciting day for all things HiPod, truly. HiPod is my podcast's nickname. I'm very excited about my next guest, Will Love. Will Love is an activist and politician in the city of Danbury, Connecticut.
Exactly. Exactly. A year into the pandemic that was just supposed to last for a couple of weeks.
I am, I have to totally admit, I was one of the guys who thought it was going to be just a couple of weeks. There were people way more realistic around me, and I was like, no way.
Yeah, I'm looking back at all the things that I shared a year ago, because a year ago today was the last day I worked in my office. And I'm more than likely just going to be working from home for in perpetuity now. So
Wow.
it's crazy.
Yeah, so I was doing some research on your everything. I was mentioning in your intro, this Danbury Area Justice Network looks incredible. But so your office work is Cardis, am I right?
Yeah,
That's
yeah,
right. Okay.
that's my day job. That's what pays the bills. But what
Nice.
drives me is my activism and doing what I can to help everyone.
Absolutely. Because I noticed, yeah, you ran for the position of city council at large, and you had an interview on the Danbury Area Justice Network site, and it was sort of revealed that you're able to sort of continue your main work at Cardis whilst acting as a city council at large. I didn't know that. I thought it was a full-time position.
No, it's actually a volunteer position. You don't
Wow.
there's the only local municipal positions that are paid are mayor, town clerk, treasurer, and the registrar of voters. I think those are the only paid positions. So any
Wow.
board of ed position, any city council position, zoning commission, those are all voluntary. So
Wow.
that's why a lot of people don't really understand the sacrifice that people involved in municipal elections and the electoral process really are giving a tremendous sacrifice of their time, because you've got monthly meetings and you have ad hoc
Right.
meetings, and there's a lot that goes into it. And you're essentially doing it because you care about your community. And what a lot of people don't understand is that the lower level, the municipal elections, that's where the average citizen
Right.
has more impact. Everyone thinks, oh, well, I only need to vote every 4 years just for president. That's the most important one. When in all reality, that is, I don't want to say it's the least important, but that is
Right.
the election that has the smallest impact upon the everyday life of the average citizen.
Wow.
It's your local city council people, it's your board of ed people, it's your zoning commissions. Those are the people that are deciding what goes up, where it goes, if they're paying taxes, how much
Right.
your taxes are going to be. I
Right.
mean, all of those things are not dictated by the president. That's there's separation of what the federal government can even tell states to do.
Oh, wow. Yeah, absolutely. That is very valuable input. I'm so glad you said that. One of the reasons that I wanted to have you for the podcast is I actually talked to someone who ran for zoning board and he didn't win. And I talked to him. He was very intelligent. He had great ideas. He had a real plan on how to actually find more money for the city of Danbury through the zoning board. I mean, he just explained it all to me in like 15, 20 minutes, so he had a really good platform, and he still didn't get on the zoning board. And who knows what could have happened if he had, you know, and you've got this great sort of program that you founded, the Danbury Area Justice Network. I actually wanted to do one quick warm up question before we got into the thick of politics. First of all, little backstory how we met. You were we were going to school around the same time at Western Connecticut State University, and you were helping manage the bookstore at WestCon at the time, and you were a very comforting and reliable presence in that situation. I'm sure it really prepared you to sort of deal with people in politics, where people have strong opinions and are maybe a little stressed out. So, I have one quick warm up question. I think you'll like it. I don't want to put you too much on the spot, but Danbury is a very culturally diverse city. It's a large city, um, and so with those two things in mind, what are your favorite sort of top secret restaurants in the city of Danbury? I mean, like the ones you don't want people to know about because the line will get longer.
Well, I think one of the best kept secrets is the Pembroke Deli
Ooh,
on Pembroke Road, and they are delicious. And I love their breakfast sandwiches, and they have hand
right,
cut French fries. I'm a sucker for hand cut French fries, but their
right.
pork carnitas are also very delicious. Quesadillas are good. My mother is obsessed with their taco salads.
Oh,
Uh, they are on Pembroke Road, and they
right.
are open Monday through Saturday. They're on Uber Eats,
Ooh,
DoorDash, Grubhub. They're on all the apps. Obviously, if you want to go directly there, you can go directly there and pick it up. They're very nice. Every
yeah.
time I call an order in, she automatically knows it's me. She knows what I want, and it's a nice feeling. So
Yeah,
that's obviously one of my favorites. JK's Texas Hot Wieners. And you can't be a Danburian and not have eaten at JK's because it's a staple. If you
yeah.
like hot dogs, then you gotta
All
have a
right.
Texas Hot Wiener.
All
And you
right.
can think with that what you will.
No, that is a serious scoop. I'm definitely gonna hit both those places before too long. I live in Connecticut as well. Just I'm sure at least right now most listeners are Connecticut based. So that was a great scoop there, Will. Thank you very much for sharing your spots. That's awesome.
Of
All
course.
right. So there's really a lot to talk about, especially right now, politics wise, sort of funding wise. Uh, yeah, I almost don't know where to start. I definitely want to hear about your run for city council at large. But let's start with you sort of creating Danbury Area Justice Network, which you're a co-founder of. Am I right?
Yes.
All
Yes.
right.
There were. It was the Saturday. I think it was the Saturday after the election. There was a meeting at
The
Dan-
2016 election. So,
Yeah, after the
right.
2016 election, and there was a meeting at the Danbury Democrats headquarters. And then from that meeting, there was a second meeting at the Harambee Center. I think the following weekend, and out of that meeting, Danbury Area Justice Network was formed. Now, State Senator Julie Kushner was at the very beginning of getting the Justice Network started. The Bortoletto
Wow.
Camila and Carolina, they're part of Connecticut Students for a Dream. They were at those intro meetings. Justin Malito, who helped start the Occupy Wall Street movement.
Wow.
So there were a lot of really established activists in the area who sort of we all came together and um, decided that we needed to give Danbury people in the Danbury area sort of an outlet and a source for activism and fighting against what we knew was going to be a challenging 4 years. And the
Hmm.
first event we did was on I think it was December 1st, which is National AIDS Day, and it's a whole bunch of things that all came together, and it was an amazing event. I would say there were a couple hundred people at the library, and I was sort of the MC. and
Wow.
there were local news there. Fox News was there, the channel, the local Fox affiliate, not phone
Right.
news. Um,
Right. Right.
but yeah, it was a whirlwind. It was a whirlwind of getting it started, and then it was just event after event and issue after issue that we were coming to arms against. And
Right.
in my work with that led me to participating at the Danbury Democratic Town Committee meetings, and those
Right.
happened once a month. And I
Right.
would always report in on what we were doing, and some of the town committee members wanted to partner with us, and see how they could partner with our organization, and then they asked me to run, and it was crazy.
Yeah.
Like, I was still in school. I actually didn't. I worked at WestCon when you were there. I did not go to WestCon.
Oh,
That
I keep
is
forgetting that.
that is
Yeah.
a common misconception. I was
I
much
know.
older than everyone thought I was. I was in my 30s, and all of you guys thought I was your age. But
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah. 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 Definitely.
so
Absolutely.
I was going to school online um, while I was working at WestCon, and I actually didn't finish school until uh, after I was running.
Wow.
I finished school just before I ran for city council. Um,
Wow.
yeah, it's crazy to me when I was putting together my literature for running. I was like, all right, well, let me list out all the things that we did, and I was like, that's a lot. And it's just crazy to think that you know in 2016, if I had told 2016 Will what
Hmm.
they would be done with, what they had done by turning forward, by the time they turned 40, I would have been like, you're crazy. That none of that's going to happen. And
Absolutely.
it did. I'm friends with my congressperson. I'm friends with Johanna
Right.
Hayes. I'm personally acquainted with all of my legislators.
Right.
And it's just crazy to me that all of this has happened
Right.
so quickly. I mean, it's what I wanted to
Absolutely.
have happen, but I just
Right.
didn't think it would happen so quickly.
I definitely think there are people both my age and your age that don't really believe that's even possible, for to make friends with your legislators. So that's great news. It's great to hear about. I do want to say that at least right now, this podcast isn't taking any definitive political stance. I want to be able to talk to people from all over the place, which,
Right,
quite honestly, as um, a- actually involved in politics, you probably do that anyway. You probably know Republicans uh, as well, but right. So I was actually curious about that. Like, do you have relationships with sort of Republican leaders in the area? Or you have, where you're like, whatever, Charles, or like something like that. Like,
Not really. I mean, I know a couple, like Andrew Wetmore. He went to WestCon, so I know
I
him.
remember him.
So I am acquainted with a couple of people by attending things. I'm not like friends.
Mm,
It was very after 2016. It was very divisive, as you know,
right,
and there were a lot of people that came out in support of Trump, and as a queer person of color, it was just a shock. It was a slap in the face, and every time I expressed why I was upset, they
right.
just wrote it off. Oh, it's not going to be that bad. He's not going to do any of those things, and he did all of those things. And it's like I wasn't just being a fearmonger. I wasn't overreacting. I knew the ramifications of a Trump presidency, and I knew he was going to win. I knew going into the
Right.
2016 election that there was no chance Hillary was going to win
Wow.
because there were just the divisiveness around her, I
Mm,
voted for her. Obviously, I voted for Bernie in the primary, but the divisiveness
right.
around Hillary goes back decades to, when Bill first ran for, I think he ran for mayor or governor, and he lost. And one
Mm,
of the reasons they told him he lost was Hillary. She was too involved in things, and
wow.
she needed to essentially make herself smaller so he could be bigger. So there's been a decades long smear campaign against her to make her out to be this villain. I know she's not great. No politician is great. I mean, if you are trying to find a perfect politician, then you're you're going to be waiting a long time.
I think
No
that's
one is
I think that's pretty mature.
no one's going to be perfect all of the time. But
Yeah,
I think a lot of that has to do with finances in
right,
politics because it's sort of a free for all.
right,
Then, essentially it's whoever has the most money can win. At least in
right.
Connecticut, we have the Citizens Elections Program. So anyone that wants to run for a state position, so for a state house position or a state senate position, or governor, treasurer, any of those constitutional positions, you can participate in the Citizens Election Program. Well, and that
Wow.
means if you get a certain number of donors in the area that you're running, you qualify for a grant from the government to fund your campaign. And
Wow.
this puts everyone on equal footing. So that way, everyone who's participating in the Citizens Election Program knows that the person they're running against isn't going to outspend them and isn't going to, everybody has the same pool of money. So
Wow.
it makes it a lot easier to get average people involved because even those positions pay, but you that can't be your full-time job.
Hmm.
So that's the other challenge too. But and then there's the whole Citizens United thing. Don't get me started on that. But
Yeah, yeah. That's a lot.
that's a lot.
Then we might have to save that for another time. Good reminder though. I forgot I was even mad about the Citizens United. Excellent. So I think, yeah, we're pretty much wandering into it anyway. I think anybody in the back of their mind would be curious about running for elected office. So why don't you take us through it? You started getting pulled into a run for city council at large. Sort of really, what is that position and what was that like? And by the way, I do want to mention I know it's a legislative position, and there are 7 city council at large members in Danbury right now.
Correct. So the city council is essentially like, for lack of a better term, the Congress of local government.
Mhm,
So there's the 7 at-large um, members, and then there are 2 members for each ward. And Danbury has 7 wards.
mhm.
Uh, so there are the ward positions, and that those are not necessarily easier, but you are only people who live in those wards can vote for you. So, for example,
Okay.
I live in the first ward of Danbury, and
Oh, wow.
that's the area that I represent on the Democratic Town Committee.
Can you,
And
sort of, I mean, this is sort of like very for the Connecticut people right here. But what is the first ward? You live in the first ward. Like, what's some of the stuff that's in that area?
Danbury High School.
Okay. Yeah.
So the first ward is like the exit, sort of like it's weird because I live on Cohanza Street and Franklin Street
Hmm.
runs that way. And this side of Franklin Street is the first ward. The other side of Franklin Street is the fourth ward.
Oh, wow.
So it's weird the way the lines are drawn. So every single state is going to be divided up um, for the federal government into districts for Congress people. So we have 5 Congress people, right? 5.
Mm, okay.
No, yeah, 5 Congress people
I
and two
mean, you would
senators.
know better than me,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
unfortunately. Yeah.
Yeah. So we have 5 districts, but like Danbury is divided into wards. In some states, each city does parishes instead of wards. Uh,
Okay.
so like in Manhattan, there's always going to be different districts in different wards and things like that. So Danbury just happens to use the ward system.
Mm,
So the first ward votes at the high school. I know the fifth ward votes at the War Memorial because that's the Westcon area. Um,
right.
is the fifth
Okay.
ward. Fourth ward is I know it by the people who are Democrats who hold those seats essentially. So the fifth ward is held by Democrats. The fourth ward is held by Democrats. The seventh ward we have one of the seats. I can't remember,
That's
but
okay.
there's a lot. So there's a lot to remember, and for each of the wards, there are 4 representatives on the Democratic Town Committee. And every city, town, municipality in Connecticut has a Democratic Town Committee and a Republican Town Committee. And
Right.
the roles of these committees are essentially to find people in the area to run for office, run for local office, both either
Right.
state held or locally held.
Right.
Uh, so that's the main purpose of a Democratic Town Committee. There are some that take more activist roles, like the Stamford Democratic Town Committee.
Okay.
They choose to be more of an activist Democratic Town Committee, as well as working to find people to run for office. So
Okay.
in my activism work, that is why the Democratic Town Committee asked me if I would run for city council at large. And I was self funded, which meant that I could only spend $1,000 or $1,200
Wow.
unless I wanted to form a committee. And you
Mm,
can form a committee, but then you have to have a treasurer and you
hmm.
have to report monthly to the state how much money you took in, how much money you spent, what you spent it on to ensure that you're
Right.
actually using the money that you are fundraising for your campaign.
Wow.
So, you know,
Amazing.
you have options essentially. It depends upon if you want to run for
Oh, shoot.
look up your Democratic Town Committee if you want to run as a Democrat, or you look up your Republican Town Committee if you want to run as a Republican. There
And if you're
is no
independent, just sit there, I guess.
well,
I'm
there
sorry.
there's two different there's a common misconception that registering as independent in the state of Connecticut means you are unaffiliated. The independent party is a party in the state of Connecticut. So if
Right.
you are registered as an independent, you're registered with the independent party. You can also be unaffiliated, which means you're
Yeah.
not affiliated with any party, but that also means you don't get to participate in the primary process. So, if it
Mm,
were me, I would want to be able to participate in as much as possible. And being able to participate in the primary process
hmm.
really does give you the freedom to, find the candidate that you feel represents you the most. And you can fight as hard as you want for that
Right.
candidate in the primary process. And if they win, then you carry on with them. If they don't win, then you support the person that did win the nomination.
Right.
But even that process is. I was a delegate to a couple of conventions, and it's
Right.
super interesting the way it works. I
Yeah.
mean, there's so many. There's a lot of it's called Robert's Rules, and there's a lot of parliamentary rules, and it's kind of like the way that they run Congress too. It's so my major was political science. I probably should have led with that.
I probably should have found out if it was political science. but that's great news. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So,
uh,
but yeah, I know I just threw a lot of information out.
that was great. But I would love to sort of, I mean, the information is incredible, but I'm actually also just curious about what it felt like and how you sort of structured your days. Like, how long were you campaigning for this? How did you manage your schedule? How many hours was it? Sort of stuff like that.
Okay. So essentially, um, it was a lot of weekends, pretty much every weekend from like May
Mm,
until October or November of knocking on doors. When you're running for an at large position, you've got a lot of hands to shake and a lot of babies to kiss. But I mean, that's
right.
a pre-pandemic world, of course. A
I
lot of
know.
I got a lot of elbows to bump
A lot of
nowadays.
elbows to bump. Yeah.
Um, but if
I
you're
actually
running
just saw
for
like a video of John Ossoff, the Georgia guy,
yeah,
and there's like slow-mo cuts of him, touching elbows with people.
yep, yeah, that's what you got to do now because you
Wow.
can't no handshaking and ugh, I mean it's just strange to think about now.
It is, absolutely.
So what the way it works is you go down to the DTC headquarters and they give
Mm,
you a turf. We use a system called the van system, where we can populate lists of voters. You can you can run it by people who vote every year, people who only vote in municipal elections, so you can really narrow down the people that you want to identify in your list to knock on doors. And essentially, it was every weekend just going and knocking on doors and introducing myself to people and letting them know that there was an election and giving them a little information about who I was and what I stood for. With I made literature that had my picture on it and some information about me.
yeah,
um, and that's essentially what it is. For a lot of it is just getting your name out there and making sure people know that you're running and that there's even an election.
right,
And then there's a lot of phone banking involved as well, which once
right,
upon a time it would be everybody going down to the DTC headquarters and just with a list and a cell phone. And
right.
now we mainly do it virtually,
Wow,
and it's usually through an online computer system, so you're not actually hard dialing a number. You're connecting your phone to a computer system,
wow,
and it's just pulling up voter after voter for you to talk to. And when I was running that, the municipal elections usually involved a mayoral candidate as well. So
right,
that's always sort of going to be where you start at the top and then you make your case for what you're doing. Um, and it was, thankfully I'm very outgoing. I'm very gregarious. I'm not too, I'm very comfortable with talking to people, but
I,
that came
that's
from
probably a good thing. Yeah.
it came from 20 plus years of retail experience of having no
Mm,
choice but to talk to strangers because it was my job.
hmm.
So I just sort of thought about that the same way. But it was hard. A lot of people didn't answer the doors.
Right,
I usually wore pink. I had to remember to
right.
smile so that way people open the door for the large black person that they don't know.
Wow.
And it's just that people don't realize that. But a lot of these areas around here, they're predominantly white families, and
Hmm.
I would try to look as presentable as I could so that way no one called the police on me. No one ever called the police on me, thankfully, but
Right,
that's happened to people I know who were out campaigning. That the police were called on them because they
wow.
were people of color walking around in an all-white neighborhood, and
And they were
somebody.
dressed up. They were dressed up, right?
Yeah, I mean
And yeah,
they had campaign stuff on,
yeah.
so yeah, they
Wow,
were clearly identified as being part of a campaign, and someone still called the police on them.
wow.
Um, So, I put myself out there. I knocked on as many doors as I could, and I did as many phone banks as I could. I spent as much money as I was allowed to,
Right.
uh, because even if you get donations, that still counts towards your $1,200. So,
Wow.
I can't. I could essentially reimburse myself. I essentially spent $600 and got reimbursed that through donations.
Well, I'm really glad that you did run. Hopefully, at some point you'll get a chance to run again. So I have some follow-up questions. Um, for one, so you said you were always wearing pink. Did you ever sort of think that over? Were you ever like, maybe I should tone it down to blue, or were
Well, I
you
mean, I wasn't always pink.
right?
I had a blue blazer, or
Right.
it was it was also summertime, so it was hot.
Right.
So, I had to try to like dress sort of accordingly, because people felt bad for me, because I'd come up to the door and there'd just be like sweat pouring down my face. Someone was like, "Do you want some water?" I was like, "I really try to limit my fluid intake because I don't want to have to go to the bathroom." But thank you. But
Yeah.
those were also the things I thought about. Like, when we were outdoor knocking, I didn't eat a lot and I didn't drink a lot, because
Right.
I would pick big walkable areas. So even if it was like a 4 or 5 block area, I just walk up and down, or we would tag team it, or we tried to have several people, so that way we'd have somebody on the odd side and somebody on the even side at the same time. So we're working both sides of the road
Right.
uh,
Wow.
at the same time, so that way you're getting twice as much done. Um,
Well, that's terrific you had people with you. How many were on your team or whatever?
it
I
varied.
mean, right.
It varied by week. So,
Right.
it depends upon the people who are running. If there are a lot of people in the area that are excited for them,
Hmm.
it depends on how much support you have from your own circle in terms of people coming out to door knock with you. But a lot of the expectation of the Democratic Town Committee is they find the candidates and provide the support. So, we have this built in system of people that continuously work on the varying elections. And then with each different election, depending upon how much money each campaign has, they might be able to pay people to knock doors. They're all very different. But 9 times out of 10, it was always with someone, because I don't drive. So I had to
Oh,
have
cool.
somebody bring me there. So unless I'm just doing my neighborhood.
You're actually the second person in a row I've talked to who lives in a big city and doesn't drive. So yeah, it's not that uncommon. Yeah,
No, it's expensive to have a car.
absolutely.
I mean,
Absolutely.
insurance and gas, and now I don't
Totally.
even have to go to work. So at
Yeah.
least prior to the pandemic, I just took the bus to work, because it picks up at the end of my
And you
road,
you you
and
froze.
I could take the bus straight up to Cardis.
Can you hear me?
So, I mean, that's Danbury's fortunate to have the Heart Bus system, and that does cover a lot of the area.
Yeah, I have to say I would have to I was doing the whole like actor thing and I would take the bus from New Milford to Danbury, get on the train, so that bus helped out a lot. And actually for my own sort of bodega recommendation, across the street from the bus station there's that little place called like Del Mundo or something like that, and they're great. Yeah, it's just a little shop. All the drinks are like $1. Yeah, I really that place really cheered me up when I was about to have like a 3-hour trip. Yeah, but I like traveling, to be honest, so it wasn't that bad.
There you go.
Yeah, absolutely. I love train rides, man, big time. And actually, since we're on this topic, uh, the federal government or what have you just put in $2 trillion roughly to the economy. 8 or 9 billion of that is going to Connecticut, from what I've heard, and then but also they're putting around 1 billion into the Amtrak train line. I was pretty excited about that.
Yeah, we
Um,
need to. It's insane to me that there's so much work to be done that I don't know why we aren't investing in our train lines. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that we are so behind the times in this. There are so
right,
many other areas that have updated their train systems. I mean, there's no reason it takes like as long as it does to get from DC to Boston. It's like 16. I don't remember what time it was.
right,
I saw a
right.
meme about it on
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Facebook.
So, just to clarify, you're saying the same amount of time from DC to Boston is from Danbury to New York on a train, right?
No, 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 no. So there's like some bullet train in Japan that travels the same distance as it is from DC to Boston in like 2 hours
Oh,
compared
wow.
to it's a ridiculous amount of time that it currently is on our
Right,
old rail lines
right,
because they're just not investing in it. But that's great if they're that's awesome that they're gonna update the Amtrak system because Amtrak
right.
doesn't even I think only in New Haven they go out of I think.
I think Amtrak does have a bullet train, but it isn't like those other countries where they're like all bullet trains or something. I don't know, but yeah, it's an exciting development. I would actually love to stay in this topic, but I just want to grab a couple more questions here about your run, and also double back to Danbury Area Justice Network. So, you said you had to make your own literature. That's very interesting. Do you remember what you put in there? Um,
Um, I put a little bit of I think I probably still have one somewhere. I know my mother does. Um, but
that's
it was
awesome.
mine was front and back. I put too much information, is what a lot of people told me. Like I should,
Hmm.
like nobody's gonna read that. I'm like, well, nobody knows who I am, so
Ah,
I need to. At the time, the only people that knew me were people that either were my customers at the mall or they went to WestCon and they knew me from the bookstore. Those are
oh.
my two pools of people. Granted, that's a lot of people, but
Yeah,
they don't all live in Danbury.
right.
Um, so I put a little bit about myself that I born and raised in Danbury and worked in the mall and worked at the college and then talked about Danbury Justice and the different events that we had put together. We did a May Day rally where we marched from one of the churches on West Street down to the bus depot. Um, but I talked about a lot of that stuff that I did there and things that I would want to work on if I was on the city council, which included, um, taking. There are a lot of deals that were made in terms of tax abatements on
Hmm.
certain properties in the city that, in my opinion, were a little underhanded because you give tax abatements when someone is going to be stimulating the economy and creating jobs. You don't give tax abatements
Right.
to condo complexes that are just going to put an additional burden on the city.
Wow.
It's not gonna create a job. It's just going to
Right.
make the city that's already over congested and the roads are not well maintained and we're
Uh,
underfunding the schools. I mean, it's ridiculous. There are just
wow.
so many things. There's just so many easy things that we could fix, and that's kind of what I touched upon. Um, we should be with the way Mayor Mark had been running things. We should be in a lot better condition than we are. Taxes have gone up nominally. They haven't gone up a lot, but they've gone up a little bit. But our per pupil spending on our students has gone down. So if our tax dollars have gone up, our roads aren't improving, we're not spending money on schools, Where's it going? What are we doing with that money then?
Wow.
So
Wow. All right.
that's how I got lured into fighting into. So I had a lunch with Glenda Armstrong, who's on the DTC and the president of the local NAACP, and she filled me in on some things that I was unaware of, and she got me all fired up. I was like, "Damn it!"
Exactly. Well, that's the thing. I mean, you get yeah, you hear stuff, you get fired up, and then what else is left except to just like
To do
either
something,
yeah, you just
you either do something or it eats at you. And they say ignorance is bliss, and it truly, truly is.
it is.
Until I took an intro to political science course when I was in college, and after that course, I was like, God damn it!
Yeah, no, you're mad.
This isn't how anything is supposed. This is like after learning how everything was supposed to work and seeing how it did. That's sort of what like drove me. I'm like, all right, I guess I got to change my major to political science. I didn't want to do poli sci because I'm terrible at math and I didn't want to do statistics, but
Right.
statistics for the social sciences is actually a lot of fun.
That's really funny. That was very good. Excellent. Excellent. Yeah, so yeah, that's just excellent, Will. Good for you, man. Okay, so let's double back to Danbury Area Justice Network. You guys have some really cool educational looking events on your social media site. You have a Facebook, do you have Instagram, Twitter, that kind of thing? Or
Just Facebook because it's
that's
essentially
fine.
I essentially run the page.
Right.
There's a couple other moderators, but most of the content is what I share.
It's a
Uh,
nice page. I was just kind of scrolling and I was like, I'm actually reading this. I would actually go to this. Like, there's some cool stuff on there. So like you have a lot of sort of transgender education sort of programs. And then oh shoot, I actually oh sorry, I'm tripping over myself here mentally. You got the transgender education programs, and I did see that Danbury is basically trying to figure out how they're going to handle the upcoming, probably going to happen marijuana legalization, um, which is mind blowing to think about. Um, so apparently there's two different bills right now. There's a I think it would be better if you explained it to be honest, but
So
apparently yeah.
there's the bill that came out of the judiciary and out of the committees, and then there's the bill that the governor is proposing. And the
Hmm,
bill that the governor is proposing does not include any sort of equity in terms of um, you know legalizing marijuana essentially because one of
mhm,
the hugest challenges with all of this legalization is there are so many black and brown people in prison for low level marijuana crimes, and
mhm.
now we have white people running boards of marijuana companies. John Boehner, who
Wow.
was the former Speaker of the House, he is on the board of a marijuana company. So
Wow.
that's why the House sponsored bill, Cure CT, they're doing a lot of that equity work. That bill does involve providing for a system that sort of gives back to the communities that have been most impacted by the war on drugs. Because, the war on drugs happened because in the 60s they needed to figure out a way to criminalize hippies and black people. They couldn't criminalize actually being a hippie or a black person, but they could criminalize marijuana. They could
Wow.
criminalize all of these drugs. There was studies done that showed the medical positives of marijuana, and Nixon hid it because it didn't fit with the narrative that they were trying to form. So, for
Wow.
decades there have been these communities that have been disproportionately targeted for this, and they need to be, these people need to be released from prison first of all, and a lot of
I would
what
have
the
to
governor's bill
agree. I
doesn't
think. Yeah.
doesn't allow for people to grow for themselves. And
Right.
that's what, if you're going to legalize it, then let people, especially with their medical cards, let them grow it themselves so they don't have to, go to the dispensaries. Danbury is actually going to be getting a dispensary.
Right.
The one that's in Bethel, compassionate care, they're going to be moving to Exit 2 in Danbury. It just passed through the zoning commission and the city council. So,
Yeah.
uh,
I mean, you know, I want to explore that further. I just worry I would so easily trip and fall into something where I really don't know what I'm talking about. But you know, I'm sure that, you know, um I'm sure you are correct. Um I'm sure also that, you know, uh say the governor or his camp, they wouldn't necessarily want to believe that there's no equity in their bill. And so I was sort of wondering about the give and take of that. Is it really like, like, do you have limits to the amount of equity that you want? Like, say, like, are there criminals for marijuana charges and other stuff, and like that's not really who you're talking about? Like, I don't know, it's a weird question. I have no idea what I'm saying. I'm just
I think so. I think I know what you're saying. So these are people that it's just a marijuana charge.
going back to what you said. Justin Malito, who was with the Occupy Wall Street movement, was there for the original meetings of the Danbury Area Justice Network. Was that Justin Malito was part of the Wall Street, like in Manhattan,
Yeah,
Occupy Wall?
the Occupy Wall Street movement
Wow.
in Manhattan. Yeah, he was one of the people who helped form that. So he brought in a lot of really great structure because he has done this sort of thing before. This isn't the first sort of group that he's helped put together. He does a lot of work with union organizing. That's what he does day in and day out. Uh,
Wow.
so he was a great resource. There were a lot of union people that were there at the beginning of getting Danbury Justice started because, that was my very first time I had been at anything like that. So they kind of, they helped build the structure, and then I sort of became the face, and you know,
Yeah,
ended
yeah.
up ended up becoming, as one of my friend Tara's calls it. She calls it the Justice League. Can you send this to the Justice League? Of course I can.
That must feel great to be nicknamed the Justice League, I'm sure.
Yeah, yeah.
That's so good. So, do you remember any of some of the advice? Do you remember like one thing like Justin Molito said that you were like, wow, it's a really good thing he said that, like even years later?
Um, Not anything that I can think of. It was just his belief in me. He believed in me before I believed in myself,
Wow.
and he was the type of person that knew when to fight, knew how to fight, and could teach people, how to do that sort of thing and teach them to believe in themselves. I mean, I can't tell you how many different events I've spoken at, and I once upon a time was terrified. Like
Right.
I to this day, if I am handed a microphone and in front of a crowd of people, internally I'm vibrating that I'm shaking so badly but no one can ever tell because I apparently keep it together enough. But I still, like, I get really nervous about stuff like that.
Sure.
Um, and, he introduced me at an event, and it was the nicest thing anyone has ever said about me. And just, he helped me to believe in myself when I didn't think that I could do it.
That's terrific, Will. And I think we should also mention, like, you say this human being taught you how to fight. Um, Nobody wakes up in the morning wanting to fight necessarily. Like you don't. Some of these things you don't want to have to fight for them. You know, and then all the same, you have to be taught to fight, right? Oh shoot. Did you hear me? Sorry, we cut out.
You froze up.
Yeah,
Yeah. Last thing I heard is you don't wake up in the morning and think that you want to have to fight.
exactly. Like you don't always want to fight for these things. Sometimes you just want to have them, right? Um, right. Yeah.
Well, I mean, I think a lot of a lot of people have a choice. They have a choice to just live their lives and just kind of be okay with things. And like for a long time, was very ignorant to a lot of things,
Hmm.
um, and then I wasn't. And I
Hmm.
had a choice that I could just, live in a world that didn't see me as an equal person, or I could fight for a world that did see me as an equal person, and I could
Wow.
fight so that way the people behind me don't have to. And that's what a lot of what activism is, involves getting out of your comfort zone and doing something for someone else, because it takes a lot of privilege to have political apathy, because that
Mm.
means politics doesn't affect your life.
Wow.
Whereas a woman, a queer person, a black person, an immigrant, politics affects our lives on a daily basis.
Wow.
My existence is legislated, so I don't have a
Wow.
choice but to try to fight for the people I know who are going to fight for me. The people I know that are going to fight to make sure that I don't lose my right to marry. I don't lose my right to adopt children. You
Wow.
know, it can't just be, well, they're not coming for me, because eventually, after they finish going for everybody, they're going to come for you.
Yeah,
And
that classic line. I mean,
yeah,
it shouldn't be a classic, but yeah.
it
Um,
shouldn't be a classic line, but it is.
right.
That's the world that we live in. I just watched on Hulu the Mrs. America
I haven't
series,
seen
which
that yet.
was it was the battle for the equal
Oh, man. Thanks.
part game to see uh, as simple as equality was. Like, why is that so hard? Equality isn't pie. You're not taking it away from anyone. It's just absurd to me that people
Absolutely.
fought
I'm
against this.
I'm sorry, Will. Like the connection just hilariously cut out your entire summary of Mrs. America. So it's on Hulu, everybody. If you wanna
it's
watch.
it's on Hulu if you want to watch
Yeah,
it.
but
It's really good.
I agree. I gotta find a new show actually. But so this is incredible, Will. Great information, and you had it all handy too. I think we're very lucky that you're sort of in the scene. And how many? Where are you at now in terms of uh how many hours that you spend per week on with these different groups?
It varies. I mean, I have a fundraiser coming up this Friday. This Friday coming up, doing a
Right.
trivia night fundraiser for the Democratic Town Committee, and that's going to be on Zoom. So I've got to actually get an email out to the Justice League
Cool.
after this, and it varies by week. It depends on what's happening, and sometimes something comes up at the drop of a dime, and the next day I'm speaking at an event. So a lot of what happens in activism happens either you've got a lot of time to get ready for it or it's happening the next day. So, we've thrown
Right.
together events with just a couple of days' notice.
Wow, that's incredible. That's incredible. Believe it or not, in the theater world, that happens as well. So you organize these events, right? And lately they've all been online, obviously. Are you guys starting to maybe plot a return to the world and events in public spaces again, or are you just not even there yet?
I don't know. I mean, it depends upon the vaccine rollout, honestly. Like, other than like the BLM rallies that happened over the summer,
Mm-hmm.
last year there wasn't really a lot that we did in person. Mainly because a lot of like Democrats and progressives took a very hard stance on social distancing and the need
Right.
to keep ourselves virtual. So, that's why we took that step to make our events virtual instead, because we didn't want to look like hypocrites, honestly.
Yeah.
Um, so, I think hopefully by summer, we might be able to do something again. But like, one thing that we always loved doing was having potlucks. I mean, how can you have a potluck now? I
I love
mean,
potlucks, man.
I do
Totally.
too. But it's so hard to do something like that now, like with people touching different serving. I mean, unless you have
Right.
people serving the food, I mean, I don't know.
Yeah.
I don't
I
know,
was
but it'll
always
be
the
nice to be able to
no,
do
sorry, you
something in
go.
person.
Yeah, right. I was always the dessert guy at potluck. What about you? What was your dish?
Likely appetizers. It depends upon how much time I had. Sometimes it would just be like the plates and cups and things, but
Right.
if I had the time, I make a fancy mac and cheese. It's not my recipe, but
Oh
it's a
yeah.
fancy mac and cheese with Gruyere, Parmesan, Fontina, and maple bacon.
Oh yeah.
Delicious.
I think I think I actually witnessed that in college one time. I think there was a potluck that we were both at
Probably.
and your mac and cheese was there. Yeah, you were a hit, man.
Probably.
That's so funny. That's
Because
incredible.
that's when I lived across the street from the college, so I could make a mac and cheese and bring it across the street.
I definitely remember being like maple, like like that's really good. Oh man, you might have to give. Are you willing to give away the recipe, or is
It's
it
not
just?
my recipe. Yeah, I'll get
Yeah,
it's not my recipe. It's Pioneer Woman. So yeah, I'll email it to you.
yeah, excellent, excellent. That's a scoop, man. Dream travel destinations.
Ooh. Domestic or foreign?
Excellent question. How about one domestic and two foreign?
Okay. Domestic. I mean, like my initial thought is the Grand Canyon because I've never been there,
Me neither.
but it's also probably hot and dusty. So maybe not. I've never been to Nantucket. I would love to go to Nantucket and stay in like a really fancy house with a nice kitchen and a pool.
At
You know,
Massachusetts,
yeah, Nantucket's in Massachusetts. I've stayed in the Cape before, but
right?
not Nantucket itself. International, I've never been to Paris. I've been to Spain, but I've never been to France. I'd love to go to Paris. And I would love to go to the UK. Go to the
You
castle.
must. Absolutely.
I'm obsessed with the Royals. I want nothing more in life than to be an HRH, or actually, they are H, their TRH, their Royal Highness.
I think that's probably the secret genesis of a lot of like sort of like English based actors and musicians, is just that they could maybe be knighted one day by the Queen. Absolutely. Very, very cool little feature that they have over there to actually be respected for something.
I know, groundbreaking concept, right?
I know. Excellent. Yeah, and just so you know, in the UK, there are they really do have the castles with like the moats that, or the old islands that you can travel across. Great picks, Will. Great information. This is better than I could have even imagined. You seem like you're very with it. So thank you for sharing your time and your ideas.
Of course. Thanks for having me. It was a lot of fun.
It was fun, actually. Yeah, I'm gonna. I keep having a good time. I gotta find an excuse to bring you back at some point. Um,
Cool.
uh, Thanks for coming out, man. All right.
Of course.
I'll
Take it
shoot you a
easy, Will.
text. You as well, man. Terrific stuff, man. Uh,
Thank you.
have an incredible weekend, sir.
I've got Zoom karaoke in a couple of hours.
What are you gonna sing?
I have no idea. I don't know. I haven't
Ah,
gotten that far yet. But I might do some old goodies, but I might do some I have karaoke songs saved in my YouTube folders.